data collection. Goodness, it has some name, but I can get down there. Current service. Well,
Great. All right, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023, and I will call the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Forgot my gavel, so let's do some hand to call it into order. We have two commissioners here today, myself and Commissioner Hall. Commissioner Miller is on jury duty and may show up at some point, but we're not sure, so we'll just continue on without him. So our first order of business is adoption of our consent calendar. These are items that are routine nature, but either commissioners or staff can pull issues for further discussion or approval if needed. Anything to discuss, Commissioner Hall?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
I will make one note before I second that, which is order 823-314, the matter of our drought declaration. We just had something we slightly needed to fix from our last meeting, so that's on there again, simply because we just needed to fix something in it for the state to be satisfied. With that, I will second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, next up under decision and action is proposed NELSCA urban renewal plan. Just to bring everyone up to speed, we've had three, I think, discussions, something like that, about this. So this is the kind of getting to the decision action day. There's been several reports provided both by the city of Lincoln City as well as County Administrator Johnson on this. Anything new to share? Any new information? Anything new you guys need to share today? Come forward. I don't think there is, but
no, thank you. The only thing we wanted to mention is that on Monday evening, the council did first reading of the ordinance. And so they plan to consider second reading of the ordinance on August 28th.
I think that is helpful.
Just a discussion, questions, public comment. And happy to answer any more questions.
Okay, so their second reading is the second. Awesome, thank you. That's something. All right, Commissioner Hall, do you want to pick up with your thoughts?
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. Even though I was absent last meeting, I have reviewed the record, including the Lincoln City staff response to Administrator Johnson's memo. And I guess I've got to start off by saying, I'm torn on this one. The relationship, as long as I've been around between the cities and the counties on urban renewal has been, hey, the urban renewal, it's city plans, city decision making, and it's come before us for our blessing. And I can't think of a case where we didn't give an urban renewal plan its blessing. So, but as I think the discussion is brought out, things are changing, evolving, and the fact that we're kind of reaching a tipping point in terms of lost revenue, that I think we have to weigh these decisions, I'd say, more carefully than ever before. Those are my initial thoughts. Do you?
Yeah, and I have very, I guess, similar thoughts to you. I'm also very torn. Our general plan and a lot of our smaller districts are also at that tipping point. I think being a small rural county and seeing that we have many of these in comparison to large urban county, scares me. We're not an urban county. We don't have the resources that urban counties have. But at the same point, I think why I'm torn is that, I certainly want to maintain our relationship with Lincoln City. I think that's really important. I think the work we're trying to do is equally important in this plan. But we also have to look out for our budget and our resources and also some of our small districts. I feel like Lincoln City, and this particular plan, it is kind of like, it's not necessarily about them, if that sort of makes sense. It's sort of like we've had many of these, and this is the tipping point, and it could have been something else that was, the tipping point. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm also very, very torn, on this.
Yeah, so. What would be a path to proceed? I mean, I think for one thing. Maybe, there's been some discussion of more vigorous reporting. And
Well, I think if the commission moves forward, and we do approve this plan, to me, that's absolutely, and simply, not just with this one, but I think going back and trying to get more vigorous reporting on districts that have already been approved. While we may not have, our agreements, past agreements tied to that kind of reporting, I think asking, past districts, if we can get more information on what's been happening with those money and that kind of stuff, I think would be good. So at a minimum, I feel like the recommendations by Administrator Johnson, we do move forward, are good, and we should be doing that. Both if we move forward with this one, but also in past ones. I think that would be a really important step.
as this process is brought into the light, and as you alluded to already, we've got a lot of urban renewal districts in this county, Mr. Johnson. Didn't you come up with, I mean, our numbers, there were only a handful of counties who had more urban renewal districts than we do.
Right now, if this is approved, we'd have the fourth highest. We would be behind Multnomah, Clackamas, Washington, and tied with Marion County, which you all know are much larger in size and scale. I think in my conversations with city managers across the county, it's important as we start to address issues relative to this discussion. I think what's important is cities, as well as if the county ever could have an urban renewal district, but I don't believe that there is that possibility, given several state definitions that would allow us to pursue such activity. But to that point, we are now addressing an issue associated with homelessness. Significant issues that need our attention, particularly as it pertains to capital improvement projects. These capital improvement projects for low income and wage earning income residents of our county could certainly benefit from allocations for an out of tax increment for the purposes of housing. I remember presenting previous to this commission that in California, simultaneously in late 1950s, and then for us in 1960 in Oregon, California and Oregon pretty much replicated one another in terms of its legislation passed to create tax increment financing. And as such, the difference, though, between the two states was that California required 25% of all tax increment financing to be used for housing. Having served, being born and raised in Oregon, but having served for much of my professional career in California, I thought that was one of the smartest pieces of legislation, and it may not have been at the time when we're thinking about it in retrospect to today. But come full circle now, and it may really be something that may be a future policy in a workshop that you might want to pursue and suggest to everybody, because the preliminary information that I'm getting from the Homeless Advisory Board and the 5-year strategic plan that will be before the cities, the county, and the tribe, we'll estimate that there is within the next 5 to 7 years a demand of over $200 million to address the 7 different types of housing for homelessness in our county. And that's a significant lift. I recognize that, and probably shocks people, but the cost at $200 million, and if you look at today's cost of construction, it really isn't that far fetched to actually be considered. So to that point, commissioners, I'm not sure that there was anything other than I had posed the question to the city manager of Lincoln City to ensure the fact, and I hope that this has been completed and done, that no elected official associated with the approval in Lincoln City has any private investments within the district whereby they have not identified a conflict of interest. And I have not been informed of that yet. They said that they would review that and provide us that. Outside of that, I'll stand by to answer any other questions you may have.
And I saw you snuck up there. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Seth Leonard, I'm with Lincoln City Economic Development
Okay.
as well. Just a few comments. So, Administrative Council, we did look into that yesterday. The ownership of properties within the Nelson Urban Renewal. One city councilor's residence is within that area. And she's the representative of that ward, so there's no investment properties. The other comment I want to make is that I think you all are bringing up really good points about looking at a county policy, how you want to treat urban renewal areas in the future. I think these are all really important questions. I guess today we want to split these two things out. I think there's a time to have a bigger conversation. Today, what we're here for is just approval of the Lincoln City urban renewal area. Ultimately, the city of Lincoln City can pass this urban renewal area without the county. Any city can do that without the county's agreement to it. The reason we're here is because part of the acreage is within the county. We put together like a simple map here and going to pull these off.
Actually, I'd like to pause there for a minute because I'm getting really conflicting information. So we were told by, or I shouldn't say we, I was told by the county council that actually the plan can't be passed by the county approval, and now they told something else.
So what we could, because there's county property in it, we have to have your approval of it. We could knock that county property off and we could pass it within the city.
But you would have to amend the plan.
We'd have to amend the plan, right? It could go as taken. One thing I would like to say is really the choice you have today is really simple, in my opinion. Can we use urban renewal funds within the county area or not? That's your choice. And if you look at the map that we provided, urban renewal is all based on the assessed value, right? The assessed value within the city is 139.5 million. The assessed value from the county is 500,000. Okay, so when you're looking at where is the money really being generated, it's within these city properties. And we're gonna have a maximum indebtedness of this of 130 million or $68 million today. The city could pass this with no county property in, but we cannot spend money then within this county area. It can be spent within the city only. So really the question you have is, we can pass this, have 130 million maximum indebtedness, 68 million in 2023 dollars that can only be spent within city of Lincoln City boundary, or it could also be spent in the urban growth boundary area. And then just to be clear, urban growth boundary is a designated area that will eventually come in within city limits. So eventually this is going to be the responsibility of Lincoln City. Eventually, when that happens, who knows? But it'd be really nice for us to be starting to have money available to make the necessary improvements to roads, infrastructure, utilities, water, sewer, so we can serve this area in the future. And it is also the only industrial designated area that we will have within our city. So as you can see from a financial impact, having this area in really changes nothing for the city. We're going to have the same amount of money. I think it's a difference of 2 million over 30 years, 131 to 129. But we want this area in because this is where the future growth is of Lincoln City. So again, I think simple choice today for you all. If we pass this, can we spend money in the county or can we? And the other thing that I would say from a revenue perspective, it comes off of assessed value, right? So if there's 100 acres in the county area, if we were to pull that out, now our city council has 100 acres that they can look where else in the city would we want to bring into the boundary. And I can tell you that 1 or 2 properties within city limits is more than 500,000. So this maximum indebtedness is actually increase. And would have a bigger negative impact on your budget. So I think, I'd just like to see the two things separated, making the choice here, and then having a bigger conversation about what the county wants to do on urban renewal, which we would love to be part of.
Yeah, I don't see them as separated, just for the record.
Yes.
So I just want to get complete clarity here, because like I said, I feel like I've gotten different pieces of information. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion here, that Commissioner Hall and I decide today that we don't want that unincorporated piece of Lincoln County in this plan. Let's say we say no to that part. That would go back to city council. And they would then come up with a different property boundary for their urban renewal district. And then we would not be asked to approve that new district that does not have the county property in it.
If there's any county property.
But if it was just inside city property, we don't, the city can go forward and approve it without our approval. Got it, okay. And is that your guys' understanding as well?
Yes, the opportunity for having feedback from the overlapping taxing districts is during the consultant for timing. And we did receive information from North Lincoln Fire and Rescue, but we didn't receive any other formal response from you or any other taxing jurisdiction. There were some other conversations. I made a presentation and we had discussion at the North Lincoln Health District's meeting. We had some emails with the school district. And so there was some additional discussion, but there was no formal response other than from the fire district during that required consultant confirmed timing. And I think mostly what we want to convey is that when you're discussing county policy, we're happy to participate to the extent that's helpful for you. And apart from that, for Lincoln City, Seth and I cannot predict what Seth and I cannot predict what Lincoln City Council will decide based on your decision. We are here with the intention through the plan to support new development in the county's jurisdiction. That can only happen with capital improvements. That involves housing and jobs that is directly, I think, beneficial for everyone in the county. This is a way to leverage the city's tax increment for the city property, to leverage that 139 million of assessed value to get improvements in your 500,000 assessed value properties. And I think that is a good return on investment of the public dollar. I understand with you, with the city, with all affected property tax districts, that it has significant budgetary implications, and that is a real thing. The projects that we have included in the plan, I would like to think that those would have a positive impact on assessed value and increasing assessed value and increasing job counts and housing units. So, you know, there is an assessed value connection with redevelopment, but there are other things that happen with housing and job production that are not directly assessed value. It has to do with quality of life, economic opportunity for our residents countywide. I don't know what else to say except that, you know, the city has been talking about this for a number of years, and I understand the collective impacts from all of the TIF districts in the county. That is a real thing. So if the plan's adopted, we intend to deliver and implement this plan like we do with all the other plans in a way that is not in a vacuum, but with our main stakeholders, whether they be state, regional, county, city, as we do with every plan. We do community visioning where we have ODOT at the table. We've had the county planner and planning director at the table to talk about what is helpful what projects are gonna be a priority and how can we make those happen more quickly to try to have a benefit for the stakeholders.
All right, well, I think you guys got a good chance to state your case, so I think Claire and I knew you were right, so. I think with, like I said, I had kind of received, I guess, confusing information. I was confused about what our decision actually was here today. It sounds like really the only decision-making authority we have is whether or not this unincorporated part is in. If we were to vote, yes, it would move forward. If we were to vote no, it would simply just go back to the city for them to take that part out and potentially put something else in. And then that can move forward without any say from us at all. So I think now that I understand that, I think our decision-making is a lot, at least in my mind, is a little simpler than it was when I got here today. You know, my biggest concern is just the county budget and all of our districts. But it sounds like we actually really don't have the authority to change this in a way that would alleviate those things. Taking out this unincorporated piece of Lincoln County, it doesn't impact the overall burden very much. I actually do agree with what was said that if city property was pulled in, when this county property was taken out, that actually might make that hit even harder, potentially, depending on what was picked. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like given our reduced, you know, my increased understanding and reduced decision-making authority, and what I thought it was earlier, to me, I feel like in favor of approving the plan. I'm not happy about it. I'm really not happy about it. And I feel like we do need to, I don't know, do something, because we can't keep, you know, taking these hits. But I don't feel like removing the unincorporated Lincoln County out of it really decreases our burden by very much.
I think my read, Chair Jacobson, is very similar to yours. You know, we've got to decide yes, no today on giving this plan our blessing. But then I think there's unanimous agreement, at least up front at this table, that we do need to take a real hard look at new districts going forward, as well as trying to promote better communication about the existing districts. And a question that's occurred to me, just again, not relevant today, but long-term question, would we have legal authority to say, adopt a set of guidelines, goals to say, we won't sign off on future plans if they do not address certain areas that we see as economic priorities? And let me add, you know, I'm very sensitive to one government respecting the boundaries and the authority of another, but when we're talking about the loss of millions of dollars worth of property from the tax rolls for 30 years, I do think we should have a stronger voice in this.
So Commissioners, Custodial County Council, absolutely, you can set priorities of what you want to see when you approve this plan. I think what you raised previously was the current plan actually doesn't have a lot of housing, low-income housing investments, and you raised that concern during our last discussion. So as far as, you know, other taxing districts, if you were to deny this plan and go back to the city, they would have to amend the plan. Even if it just included the city boundaries, it has taxing districts, which include a lot from the county. Of course, you could be vocal and raise concerns about that when that process came.
But we don't vote on that.
No, we could give a public input.
Okay, yeah.
So at this point, I would be willing to make a motion that we approve the Neil Scott Urban Renewal Plan as presented.
Like I said, I'm not happy about it, but I second your motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Okay, I would just say as a follow-up that maybe in the next, I don't know, give you a little time, Tim, maybe we'll say in the next like 6 months or something. I think that having maybe a workshop or something like that on urban renewal in general, what we can I guess, get or ask for from current districts, but also what some legislative fixes, because I think it is probably a legislative fix. You know, we could look at in the future with applications that come in the future date would be helpful, so that we're not just always in this spot. I think that would be good.
I agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on, under discussion information, first up is nonprofit social service agency grant presented by Tim Jonathan, County Administrator.
Chair, Commissioner Paul, thank you. This is our annual allocation for private nonprofit social service grant dollars. May I first say this? Thank you to the review committee. It is an overwhelming activity that they embark on. They are recipients of something that looks like this, and each and every one of them take the painstaking volunteer time to go through this on behalf of the county and really provide, it's my phrase, not theirs, elegant input to us. I appreciate that very much. As such, the question before you today is, should the commission approve the recommended allocations for this grant by the private nonprofit social service grant allocation review committee? Recommendation is to approve the proposed allocations as identified in attachment A of your staff report. A little bit of background on this. We've been doing this for over the last 25 years. And has been allocated in excess of $3.5 million. However, within the past 5 years, the fund has provided nearly $1 million in grants to local nonprofit organizations, which I compliment the commission for its steadfast direction in this activity. There are a variety of criteria to set forth to fulfill these, but first and foremost, you have to be a social, an organization that is engaged in social service programming here in our county. And you have to illustrate an evidence of that need in community support, along with a host of other criteria too many to mention here today. As it pertains to this activity, there were 23 grant applications received for a total of $291,500. The review committee recommends the allocation of 207,000 out of the 210 that the commission had allocated in the budget for this purpose. Why only 207 out of the 210? Well, what's interesting is that during my tenure here, what I've ascertained is there is a host of organizations in our county that provide food for the needy and less fortunate of our county. And we found that on another side of our services as a county, we provide food inspection. And with those food inspection come corresponding fees. Last year, the commission in its heart saw fit to say, Mr. County Administrator, make sure that there is an allocation set aside for those organizations that when their fees permits for this comes up, that we can provide them that money to do that. And so hence the reason for the $3,000 sitting aside, because the review committee is very passionate on that. So that is how you get reconciled. However, there were several applications that need a little bit more clarification as it pertains to, because there was a redundancy because of when we got this information and how quickly we wanted to be able to get these dollars dispersed. It is the recommendation today to accept these and then send me back to talk to the organizations that need a little bit more clarification to get those taken care of, and we'll bring those back at our next meeting in September, if that's okay.
Yeah, the four that I felt needed a little clarity was there was a proposal from Salmon River Grange and Cascade Relief Team. Two different proposals, but same tax ID number and same person preparing the grant, so it actually looks like the same organization's applying twice. Maybe that was an error, I don't know, but I feel like that needs to be clarified a little bit. And I don't Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt, but I saw that too, and I sat in on part of the committee discussion the other night, and at least a couple of folks like that as well, so.
Yeah, and I don't think the San River Branch have their own tax ID because they are not a nonprofit, they're 501c6, I think. So anyways, that needs to be dealt with, and maybe CRT just needs to pick the one that they like the best or whatever. And then the other two that I saw that maybe needed just a modified proposal was Chance and Coastal Support Services. They had, well, I'll start with Chance. They had listed as part of what they want to use the funding for was winter sheltering. We as county are doing winter sheltering, so we don't want to be paying for another organization to do it when we're doing it and working on money for that right now. So maybe we just want to modify the proposal and take that particular item out. And certainly connect up with Jane and the shelter manager we're hiring so that they can be included in those discussions. Winter sheltering and then coastal support services. They had talked about winter sheltering, they had done in the past. I just kind of couldn't tell from the budget that they had provided if they were doing sheltering with that budget or not. It was just unclear, so I think that just needs to be clarified. And those are the four that I felt needed a little follow-up. However, I am okay if Commissioner Hall is on, with the exception of those four, moving the rest of the titles forward. If that's
That's really agreeable to me, so.
okay, do you need a motion for that, Tim? Because we
Please.
still, okay. you
Yeah,
need a
we
motion?
could go ahead and take that with the attached chart that you have there and get those approved, and then we'll come back and with clarification, get the other four taken care of in our next meeting.
And just for, want to make sure, Cascade Relief Team, Salmon River Grange, and.
Chance and coastal support services.
Okay,
And again, if you're one of those organizations listening, it doesn't mean you're not getting money. It just means we need to do a little follow-up.
right.
So,
And you know, this, I think, harkens back to our last agenda item. We've had this program in place for a long, long time. And I think, you know, it has functioned really well, as Administrator Johnson mentioned. 3.5 million in what period distributed?
25 years,
Yeah.
but more importantly, within the last 5 years, $1 million, which is really significant. Because please understand COVID and how that positively impacted this community. So the direction of the commission has been tremendous on that.
you ready?
All right.
Go for it.
Yes, I would like to move that we approve all of the recommended funding allocations from the Nonprofit Social Service Allocation Committee, with the exception of Cascade Relief Teams, Salmon River Grange, Chance and Coastal Support Services, and direct staff to assist us in follow-up on those organizations.
I have a second motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Mm.
All right, moving forward, presentation of North Lincoln Sanitation Solid Waste Rate Review Report presented by Tina French, President of North Lincoln Sanitation.
If you can get Tina online, that'd be great. And I'll start with it so that we can frame the process, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, the record.
Yeah, I'm Lexi Hole. I am Tina's daughter, so
I was gonna say you're not Tina.
I know, unfortunately.
This is our annual review of increase for solid waste collection. And this involves North Lincoln Sanitation Service as part of our franchise agreements. Recommendation before you today, there are three options: approve proposed rate increase, accept with amended rate increase, and do not accept the rate increase. Staff recommendation is to approve the proposed rate increase. The request by the provider is for 4.5% rate increase. This rate changes within the operating ratio as set forth by county code. It is, and it also should be noted, it is far less than the rate approved last year at 12% for franchise services, which the commission all saw of the three franchise agreements that we oversaw, all had spikes last year for a variety of reasons associated with labor, fuel costs, maintenance, and please remember there was a change and where some of the solid waste was hauled to, and so there was a corresponding adjustment associated with that. Attached in your staff report are a rate review letter from Lincoln, North Lincoln Sanitary, the rate schedule for July 1 through 2023 through June 30, 2024. And also online, and for those who are listening, there is the county code so that you can identify that. The element associated with this mathematically, it takes a little bit of time for us to calculate everything, and we all work together to ensure the fact that numbers occur with within the county code. They do so. In the case of North Lincoln Sanitary, presentation before this commission is in August, with in September, and so should you adopt the rates today, these then will become effective and retroactive to September 1. So I want to make sure that you understand that the proposed rate of 4.5%, which is far less, and people will see a lower reduction in their fees with the approval of this, will take place at that point. You can see some of the highlights that have been identified within the context of costs. They have far lower than what they have been last year, which is important for, I think, everybody to understand. One that you might want to take a close look at is under fuel. They had a significant amount last year, and I think we all, as residents of the county, felt that in our purse strings. It has dropped considerably. Please understand something, that for all three of our franchisees, they buy in bulk, unlike us when we go to the pump and get what we need for our individual vehicles. So they were able to ascertain a fuel reduction, substantial fuel reduction in that purchase during the course of the year. As such, it looks pretty straightforward, similar to the other two franchisees which have come before you. And with that, I'll turn it over to the North Lincoln representative.
Is Tina's video gonna be on?
It's up to her.
Okay, I'll let her know.
Yeah, and Tina, if you can, oh, that was loud.
Have an option to turn my video on because I am just a guest.
Okay, Ken's working.
Hold on just 1 second, Tina.
Okay.
Promote his panelists. I think that's what he's gonna do.
Here we go. Thank you.
Okay.
And now you're muted, Tina.
Okay, so there's that and video. Voila.
Hey, you're here. We see you.
That's the fastest promotion I've ever received in my life. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Jacobson and Commissioner Hall. Sorry to miss Commissioner Miller today. I was excited to see him. But thank you for the time to come before you this morning. You know me, I know, but I'm excited to have our daughter Lexi. She joined the company full-time on June 1st. So that is really exciting for us. Lexi is third generation North Lincoln Sanitary. So very exciting. I'm going to go through the rate review part of the slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lexi to talk more about what's coming up, recycling legislation, and the more exciting part of the things. I'm going to skip through some slides because you can read, but I wanted to just go over some of the major expenses as Mr. Johnson reviewed. Generally, there's 3 or 4 things that really drive rate increases: labor, repairs and maintenance, fuel. Labor is one of the things that we are challenged to keep up with because of, oh, wow, that's looks weird on my screen, but hopefully you can see it better. With the increases in minimum wage, we have to keep that wage gap going. So We have done 5% increases in the last couple of years, and that's our projection for this year's increase, even though it's not quite keeping up with CPI. An 8.8% increase in 2022 with the rate increase that we already had last year was just not something we could stomach for the ratepayers. So this year, we are just going to be a bit above the projected CPI for our labor increases to try to keep up with that. You can see that we are a bit low on the national average for CDLs, and we're a bit high for the coastal region of CDL drivers. And I'm proud of that because we have the best staff that we could ever have. And I think that is a direct benefit to our customers because our guys are just top notch, and our girls. Disposal costs are continuing to climb. We expect them to continue to climb. I know Administrator Johnson is familiar with what's happening at Coffin Butte landfill with Benton County trying to, but Coffin Butte landfill and Republic Services is trying to increase their footprint and get permitting for that. And they are having challenges doing that, which means increased disposal costs for everybody in the state. That is the only regional landfill west of the Cascades. There is a small landfill in Lane County. There's been talk whether they're going to accept waste from our region or not. We're still in those discussions, but we continue to look for disposal options around the state. Arlington landfill in Arlington, owned by Waste Management, is probably the next stop if something happens to Coffin Butte. And I can sure you understand what cost implications are there when you have to drive 8 hours one direction with one load of garbage. So in exciting news, fuel costs, as you can see, have come down significantly. We're very excited about that. So that does have a rate impact. How this, if we can go to the next slide, there we go. The rate impact is, I use these two, 32-gallon roll cart is the majority of our residential customers. So I always use this one to just give a picture of what the rate's going to look like. It's about $1.80, $1.60, which is significant. I don't want to poo-poo that. Our rates are still very competitive in the county and throughout the state. But that's what we're looking at for most residential customers. And then most commercial customers, we're looking at about an $8 increase per month. Next slide. Oh, we can skip that one in the interest of time. Here we go. Recycling and participation levels. Recycling continues to increase. And that is something that I wanted to touch base on that Lexi will talk about a little more in depth of. The tip fee that we're paying for recycling is more than what we were paying for disposals. So while our goal is to see our recycling increase and garbage decrease, which we have seen, it doesn't have a positive impact on the rate. And that's just the logistics of that. We continue to choose to tip the recycling. There are some companies throughout the state that there is a economic driver in legislation that if recycling increases more than garbage, a company can file for a diversion with DEQ because it doesn't meet the economic measurements. But I don't know of anybody doing that now. It did happen during COVID when it really skyrocketed, but North Lincoln Sanitary never did divert any of our recycled tons to the landfill. We've continued to take them to the material recovery facilities. Mixed compost continues to grow, which is exciting. And we knew that it would take a few years to get to our maximum usage. We continue to get calls from customers that denied having the service in the beginning, and they didn't want a third roll cart. They didn't, oh, we don't have any compost. And it's like, well, if you eat, you have something. but we continue to see not only the tonnages increase, but the participation levels increase. So all the numbers in this category are going the way we want them to go. Garbage is decreasing, recycling is increasing, compost is increasing. So those are all great indicators. Next slide. This is exciting. We do not have a commercial compost program, and the reason for that is if you have a commercial compost program, the rate that you pay at Pacific Regional Compost Facility, which is across the road from Coffin Butte landfill, that cost goes up significantly and it becomes unaffordable for our ratepayers. However, we are allowed to have pilot programs that we monitor very closely, and we have two very successful ones going right now. With the Pelican Pub, we are composting all of their spent grains from their beer. And then our newest one is Samaritan North Lincoln Hospital. We do all of their food scraps from their kitchen. So we did a pretty intensive training with them, with their staff, and that has been a very successful program so far. So we're excited about those. Next slide. We can skip this one. Well, I do want to talk about one thing with that slide. Sorry. You have heard me talk to you about lithium ion batteries and the danger, and I'm sure you've read numerous articles about fires. Lincoln County is not immune from those. I believe all 3 haulers have had fires caused by lithium ion batteries, whether it's in our trucks or our transfer stations. We have a place in Salem now called Garten Foundation that takes lithium ion batteries. So we are now accepting those free of charge. And we are doing education programs on those to try to keep those out of the garbage as much as possible. So I did want to touch base on that. Next slide. This is just, we can skip that slide. This is our recycling. We can skip that slide and that slide. And then I'm going to let Lexi take over here and talking about our recycling contamination plan.
Yeah, and I know in the interest of time, I'll be pretty quick on this. I did write most of it down, so if you want to review and then call us later with any questions, please let me know.
Sure.
A few of the things that are pretty exciting, I'm just going to touch on a couple. One is full-time recycling education position, me, very exciting. So I am working with the City of Lincoln City Sustainability Committee. I'm working on the Lincoln County Solid Waste District with Paul Seitz. He's wonderful. And then I'm also on the board for Association for Recyclers. So getting that state level information and bringing it local is really, really important to us because pretty much everything that comes from Metro eventually trickles down to us. So just know that we are really involved in that. I think another thing that's really exciting is, again, our mobile app, Waste Wizard. We've had a lot of really great feedback, things like snowstorms or heat exhaustion, which doesn't happen very often on the coast. But when that does happen, we're able to get mass information out to our customers, which is really helpful because not everybody follows us on Facebook. So you keep going. You'll see the app and the social media and everything. Go to the what's next slide. And I'm going to touch, keep going. Keep going. Okay, new transfer station. So this is exciting. We should be done with this by the end of the year. And next slide will show, next slide after that. Great news is we are actually gonna be able to haul to Juneau after that in Toledo. So once we have 2 different bays for our transfer station, we'll be able to separate construction and demolition debris. So we'll be able to trailer one to Juneau and then one to the normal landfill. They are collecting a ton of stuff. I don't actually know the exact statistics right now, but they're saying up to 90%. I think it's a little bit lower than that realistically, but they are trying to get everything they can out of the waste stream so that we can reduce, reuse, recycle.
And that's paper products, right? Like paper plates and stuff that Juneau is taking.
It's a lot of things. I believe in that graph, it's showing organic waste, paper, plastic, metals. So they're really trying to separate. Oh, really? Yeah. That's from their website. So we'll have to talk to Juneau. I don't know.
Organic waste is, I don't believe that they are doing that yet in Toledo, but with the Juneau project, the plan for the organic waste is to put it into a biodigester and recover that. And they have the technology to do that. I don't believe they are doing it yet in Toledo because of permitting issues, but the Juno project as a whole worldwide, that is the plan for it.
There you go.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then last thing, back one slide, please. Thank you. Recycling Modernization Act. So you guys, I believe, got a needs assessment survey. And once you filled that out, that kind of started the ball rolling. So the next thing will be, and it'll be optional, obviously, but in late 2024, after the PRO program plans are approved, there will start to be some discussion about service expansion based on your needs assessment. And then in late 2025 is when things will actually start rolling with the RMA. On the state level, I am involved with a lot of the discussion around this and trying to learn more about how this is going to affect us, because it really could shake things up. So it's just something to keep in mind. And then lastly, if we go to the last slide, recycling market update. This is what we were talking about with the cost of recycling. So this font is so funny. It does not show up like this on mine, but today's price is 80% less for the value of the recyclables than it was just a few months ago. So it is dropping significantly. Plastics are the worst. So we're only accepting right now in our material recovery facilities, only accepting number 1 and 2 bottles. And even those, which is HDPE and then PET plastics, even those are just nobody's taking up. So there are facilities that are actually stockpiling bales of plastics because they have nowhere to take them. So metals are doing okay, they're kind of flat, and then paper, actually there's a mill shutting down in Tacoma, so that means bad news for paper as well. But that's why the recycling is just so expensive, and we are worried that that's going to continue. With that happy news. That's all. And if you guys have any questions, Tina's information is there, and she can provide mine as well, so that you have me too.
Questions, Commissioner Hall?
No questions. I appreciate the informative presentation. I think we are lucky in this county to have 3 garbage haulers who are all really progressive and innovative in terms of working with the clients, the communities, and bringing services online that are helpful to a lot of people. So I would say, after having looked at the numbers, I'm willing to support the 4.5% increase. It is within the ratio reporting system, and I don't think, hopefully it won't cause huge sticker shock for everyone, and the circumstances of today really do justify it in my view.
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, congratulations on your new position. It's always nice to see local kids stay local, being one of those kids myself. So good. I don't have any concerns. I'm gonna give it 4.5%. People on a fixed income, that can be difficult for. However, I think this is the same thing we try to do with the county and other fees, trying to keep, small rate increases over time rather than no rate increases, and then to be hit with a whopper, I think is much harder. So I'm supportive as well. I don't know if this is something we need to wait for Commissioner Miller to be back with, or do we wait till another meeting, or can we approve today?
Well, I think today was just a special. Usually you want to take public input.
Okay, we can do that. So we'll take public comment and then come back, and it'll be 2 weeks so we can get
All right,
and then make a decision there.
works for me.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tina.
All right, moving on to supplemental budget for consideration, presented by Administrator Johnson.
Seems like I'm taking up most of the agenda, so this is the most sophisticated of the elements, and this was to be presented by other staff, but I have a variety of folks behind me who I have asked to help and assist me should I get this wrong, because there were a couple things relative to the allocation and specific department and fund numbers that I want to bring to your attention. So I'll just quickly walk through this. we typically go through a budget adjustments or supplementals on an annual basis. We just obviously finished our budget for this year, and as such, we're doing cleanup. And cleanup means, what did we miss in terms of our own transparency? And so this document identifies several new elements, and I'd like to walk through this with you. So please bear with me. The first one deals with the winter shelter program manager. This has been something that the commission has wanted to pursue. In my conversations, it was evident that this is a very important component for the unfortunate residents of our community, and it's something that we should, for the purposes of our operation, be line item. And it's important because this was my recommendation to you during budget, and unfortunately it was not included within the context of a department that I wanted it in, but for the purposes of the day, we're asking to add that to our budget. And as an editorial amount, I think in my history of public service, this is part of the reason why we haven't had real success in addressing the issues of winter sheltering, let alone of homelessness, is that we haven't line itemed it. And I think under your leadership, the purposes of this is to do that so that it is understood that this is what we need to do to be successful. So within the context of this, there is an item on the chart that identifies this, and it shows that the contingency to pay for this comes from HHS. That is not where our effort was. This is under Fund 209-423-99501. I want to verify this with you that is not where the money will come from. This was a mistake on our part. This will come from the general fund reserve and or contingency, and that's how we'll fund this. It's not that big of an issue relative to that, but I want you to know that those numbers will change. And again, because of unfortunate leave of absences by personnel at finance, I am switch hitting today and trying to do the best I can relative to.
Yeah, my understanding is it actually goes into that fund 409 fund. That's where it's going to. The mental health fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or behavioral. Behavioral. So unless somebody from HHS, who I was in contact with Jane, and unless Val is here, Val Davis is here, that wants to confirm that, so you just don't think it's the county administrator that is arbitrarily making that decision.
I don't see anyone from
Val's-
HHS.
Val's on.
Oh,
Oh,
Val's on. Okay.
And if you can get her on to speak as a panelist, that would be lovely. So she could confirm that.
I promoted to panelist and she's gone. There she is.
There we are.
Can she hear us?
Val, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. We were just confirming that this fund is coming out of contingency and going into the behavioral health fund, correct?
I am here to witness and verify that that is the case.
Great,
Okay.
thank you, Val.
Thank
Okay.
you, Val.
Absolutely.
The next identified element relates to information technology. There is no impact to any reserves on this. It is a function of the approval of the appropriation shift of the budget for an assistant director. Of interest, every one of our departments has an assistant director, except for when we explored this last year. IT, information technology, did not have an assistant director, and as such, it is important for redundancy in our system that we do that. So this was a recommendation that was made. And that one is moving forward. Again, no issue related to any fund or, pardon me, any department or fund, no correction necessary there. The next one deals with emergency management. We talked today, timely. The county deploys 3 different grants, as you know. One of those is the social service program. Another one is emergency management grants that help support organizations from education to other local governmental agencies to ensure that there is the necessary materials and supplies to support our residents should something happen, unfortunately, in our county. Again, this is under your direction and tutelage. We just released that information, that grant earlier in the spring and summer, and it will come up again. Now, let me explain where the issue occurred here. We had $36,000 identified on that. When we went through the change to a new software program that you're all familiar with, OpenGov, it unfortunately did not manifest itself in the appropriate lineage. So if we turn to, again, the chart associated with the account numbers, and I'm going to turn to the sheriff here in a moment to ask for his verification associated with this. What has transpired with that is that it should have come out of department number 992 prior to our fiscal year 24. Unfortunately, within this report, it was shifted to department 290 and was overlooked during the budget preparation process. So we're clarifying that now, that it comes out of the 992 and not out of the sheriff's contingency in his budget.
Curtis Landers, speaking from the sheriff. Basically, I think that with the 992 fund is the other public safety fund, the 290 is the emergency management fund. I know that our finance department is trying to clean up the 992, and this was actually going to not be in there anymore and actually be in the emergency management grants for use, but both line items were zeros. That money didn't get anywhere, is my understanding.
The one thing that's a little confusing on this one for me is if you scroll up, Ken, is the description is post emergency management grants. No, that's what we actually call it.
Oh, yeah, it's just emergency management grant.
Okay, yeah, the post got me.
Needs to come out. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got me confused, because we do have post emergency management money coming in here.
We do, but
Yeah.
it's not our money.
This is that, okay,
It isn't
great.
that. Yeah, correct.
Okay, that's my one question I had on that.
So any other verification on that before then? Thank you. And then the next ones are related to public works in their department. If Mr. Kenyon is around, he can join me on this for a moment. First one deals with solid waste district. This is a project part-time employee position. And there really isn't anything here other than the appropriation shift internally to make that happen. There is no impact on the reserve accounts or anything of that nature. Pretty straightforward. Roy Kenyon, our Public Works Director, can answer any questions on that. And he also has his division manager, Paul Seitz, I believe, is here too as well. Any questions that you have on that?
I don't have that.
That's the name. Okay.
That was quick, right?
Well, and I'm Roy Keenan, the Public Works Director for Lincoln County. Just to kind of fill in maybe a little bit in the ones there, what Paul is doing there is, he started the new program with the RV cleanup and some of the site cleanups. And the idea is this person, part of their job is going to be kind of the on-site inspector during this process. amongst a lot of other things, but that is kind of what spurred this on, was that there was a infusion of money into that program. And it came to be quite evident that Paul needed assistance with this stuff, and so that's what this person's gonna get.
Okay, thanks.
The next one under this is related to parks, and this is contractual services, and this is a correction. Has funding on this one. It does not impact our reserve accounts, and again, I'll turn it over to Roy and or Kelly Berry, our parks director, to answer that question.
Yes, I would love to blame this on the software, but I actually can't do that. I believe this is actually an error on my part.
We never alleviate human error.
And, you know, it did not make any sense once Kelly brought it to my attention that we dropped this line quite extensively. And so fortunately, in late spring, early summer, basically in last fiscal year, park attendance was revenues were leading into this summer. It's been absolutely crazy. Almost to the point of too much, but because of that, revenues were up. And our expectation is, unless we end up with some weird event, that next spring, at the end of this 23-24 fiscal year, revenue will also be up. And so with our projection, this kind of is a push. So what we're doing is we're basically taking what is additional revenues and using that to basically build up our contractual services line. One of those in the contractual services line, one of the things we have not done last year because we haven't had to, and it was like clean boat ramps at the end of the summer season. And not that we're expecting that to happen, but we're due. You know, basically what happens is we have one of these flood events in the winter, and in order to get the boat ramps back up to being used, we have to clean this, and that's contractual services. Also, in the past, we used park employees to try to cut and split and stack our firewood. We've also in the past used the correction crews. It doesn't work. The numbers just don't work out. Basically, we're spending more money on creating the firewood than we are actually selling the firewood. And so Kelly has actually went to a contractor to basically deliver packages of firewood parks. It's been working really well. That is an additional expense that we've taken on just recently. And also there is a list of plants that Kelly's going to be wanting to actually purchase to basically establish some areas and repairing areas in some of our parks. And so there was some other expenses that maybe we weren't thinking about at the time that we didn't budget. Plus, like I said, that was my fault. I should have put 4 in there instead of 2, but we're going to go for that.
One of the things that's identified in the staff report is that we have a very large and complex budget. There are thousands of line items, and so department staff as well as finance work diligently to look at every item, but occasionally there are oversights that need to be made, and hence the reason why we come back in a public forum, present this information to you. The next one deals with public health, and it's a WIC and communicable disease effort on our Department of Health and Human Services. This is a position, a new position. I always use this term for the public. For counties, it's the color of money. And in this particular case, this is a new position, but it's funded through new dollars that they receive from federal or state resources to support this activity. There is no impact to our budget as it pertains to reserves. It is an addition to that occurred during the process. And as you know, we try to do at least 3 to 4 budget adjustments and supplementals every year so that these dollars that come in specifically, Commissioner Jacobson, as Jerry, you write a lot of grants and new dollars that come in on an annual basis. And so we have to go through and make those budget amendments and supplementals to add those
I
dollars.
have more coming.
Yeah, there you go. So that means more supplemental.
Be back to it.
Yeah, we'll be back up again.
But isn't that a nice problem to have?
It's a good problem.
It is indeed. So you have before you a resolution to go ahead and adjust the 2023-2024 adopted budget of appropriations for Lincoln County. And to that regard, we have both on the general fund, Lincoln County Solid Waste District, Public Health Fund, and Behavioral Health Fund, and we'll make the appropriate adjustments, accounting adjustments that were described today to the general fund, and execute those appropriately from those that making the correction that we have on the staff report today.
Okay, so I would say, I don't have any more questions. Do you have any
I do.
questions? No? Okay, then I would say we come back at our next meeting to decide on this. So we have time for public comment. If that, does that work with the timeline?
Well, I think one that I would like to move forward on, because we are in the midst of a timeline, is the hiring shelter, and I would like to get that one confirmed if we could, so that we can get that moving, because as you know, we do want to stand that up in October. That will leave us relatively, how do I say this, hanging out in the wind a little bit. So if we could get that one approved, I would be much obliged.
Council, is there any reason why we can't approve all?
No, typically, a lot of these positions are administrative in nature when you do a PA form. So it's not something necessarily that always comes to the board.
Okay.
So if you want to remove that one out.
Or so we get one out to approve or approve the whole package.
I'm comfortable with either approach. Do you have a preference, Madam Chair?
Let's just get it all done.
I
Let's
think
ready to
so.
go.
I think it allows our directors and managers to move forward on a lot of important things. So I will move that we approve the supplemental budget items that have been presented for consideration this morning.
And I second that. All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you, staff. All right, I got a request to take a quick 5-minute break before we come back and do the Beaver Creek aerial spray. So it is 11:12, so we will come back in 5 minutes and we can Ready. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We just took a quick 5-minute recess. We are now on discussion information item B, which is Beaver Creek aerial spray. So I'm just gonna read kind of a couple of notes here and then we'll have a discussion. I think the first thing is that the county doesn't have any direct authority in this matter, and it's important people to understand. In the words of a constituent that emailed me this morning about this, she used the word soft power, and I thought that was a nice term. We don't have hard authority, but we do have some soft power, making public comment, helping make sure there's information available, that kind of thing. There was a meeting convened yesterday by Silver Rock Water District. Commissioner Miller is in attendance. Commissioner Paul and I were unable to attend because of quorum issues. When you have two of us in a room, there is a quorum. It was not a publicly noticed meeting, so we could not attend, but Commissioner Miller was there. Commissioner Miller is taking a lead on this issue for the three of us. And again, he is not here today. He has jury duty. And Ken Lip, our PIO, is keeping track of certain public information and how what's happening. Lincoln County Legal Counsel did request the full pesticide application plan from ODF, so we do have that. And so for the purpose of today's discussion, I think one of the things that Commissioner Hall and I need to discuss is that the public comment period is currently open, and whether or not we would like to provide public comment from us, which I would like to do. Hoping we'd like to do the same thing. I'm hoping that you and I can kind of come up with maybe some bullet points or things we'd like to say in our public letter, and then direct staff and our PIO to kind of create that for all of us to sign. You know, my three biggest points would be public safety, including water safety, environmental safety, and then kind of public outcry, both currently, but also based on the ballot measure we had, which ultimately didn't hold up. But I think it's a nice like testament that people in this community are not supportive of aerial spray. Any other kind of bullet point items that you like to include in that, Commissioner Hall?
I think that's the heart of it. Now, I had seen or heard that the public comment deadline closes tomorrow, but I understand that may actually be at midnight tonight. Or yeah, I see nods from our partners at ODF in Toledo. So
I think it's probably possible that you and I could get a letter out today for public comment.
Definitely,
yeah.
and Mr. Lepp has been assisting us on a lot of research, and he's one of our resident wordsmiths. So yeah, if the three of us could perhaps collaborate, because we're not supposed to meet face to face outside the meeting, maybe Ken could be kind of our go-between.
Sure, and if we can't have Commissioner Holloway in, this is I'm sure give you the two of us to sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Commissioner Miller happens to make it here, all the better.
Okay.
Mhm.
Couple other things I just wanted to add is there was I'm sure people have seen this already, but there was a quote in the House News. That came out, I saw this morning, it was said yesterday, it was highly unlikely to happen. I think the owner of the property was available or unable to make a decision for a number of days, but that decision will be made shortly. So that's kind of what I know. Again, I think Commissioner Miller would probably know more. He was in that meeting, but he's on jury duty today. I do see ODF in the room sitting back there. And so while I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, I was hoping you might be able to kind of provide us what the current status of the permit is, public comment period, the area in the permit, and sort of where we're at. Okay.
Oh, and while they're coming forward, I just maybe make a note for folks who are interested in seeing a lot of the documentation related to this. It's available in various places on the web, but including our own website. Today's meeting packet includes a wealth of official documentation.
Hey, welcome. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, good morning, Matt Thomas, Florida Department of Forestry and Forester here in Toledo.
Michael Curran, I'm the district forester for the West Oregon district.
Thank you.
Yeah, so is there a specific spot you want us to start?
I think the questions I have is just, because does seem to be some confusion with the public on if the permit has already been issued, if it's not been issued. But yet there's a public comment period, even though the permit has already been issued. That's at least the questions I'm getting into my inbox.
Process.
So I think kind of the process of this and the status of that process, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll start off with kind of the misconception that it's a permit. This is actually a notification. ODF's not a permitting agency. So we don't issue permits, for forced activities. These activities are already permissible within the Oregon Forest Practices Act, as long as the Oregon Forest Practices Act is followed. So that's kind of one misconception that it's a permit from our agency. It's a notification to our agency of the proposed activities on forest land. With that, the notification with certain activities within certain distances from protected resources, those require the written plans, and those written plans are written plans to make sure that the landowner and operator knows that there's protected resources in the area, and outlines what the measures are going to be taken to protect those resources during the proposed operation.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so what is the process, I guess, within the agency, taking the documentation submitted by the property owner and doing the review to determine that in fact it does meet all the requirements of the Forest Practices Act?
Sure. Yeah, so we receive those notifications, instantly when they're submitted through our FERN system. And our stewardship foresters take those and basically take the operation area and overlay it in our resource layer that in the ferns there on their side of the ferns piece. The resource layer is right there, and it shows all the identified protected resources, whether it's streams, birds, intakes, that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
So with the written plans, there is a 14-day waiting period, or sorry, comment period, public comment period on those. And that comment period starts when the pieces of the written plan all are complete. So there's certain requirements of a written plan outlined in rule. And once all those pieces are submitted, in this case, they were submitted basically directly with the notification. That's when that comment period starts, the timeline, and that's 14 days. So,
And if I could just jump in again, when I said the questioner or about the end of the period, I think a lot of people had thought, and maybe it's even been reported, that tomorrow is the end of the period, but that's not the case. You were that it's.
it is, and it is a little confusing, and to be honest, I was a little confused myself looking at it, just the way it reads. It reads August 17th at 12 a.m. and then in parentheses PT for Pacific time. So
So basically midnight tonight.
midnight tonight, correct? Yeah, which is technically tomorrow.
Yes.
So that, and it's
Okay.
it's not the most clear, and I apologize for that. So yeah, the comment period is open essentially through today. And we've been receiving all that comment and taking that comment and forwarding it on to the landowner and operator as well, just so they're fully aware of the concerns that are out there. So. Okay.
Yep, and I would just tap on to that. Kind of our role when it comes to the public comment period is to make sure that the landowner and operator are receiving that, so that they can make an informed decision if they want to proceed or not. But also with the goal of that public comment period is to also make us aware of potential resources out there that we're tracking as well. So that's kind of twofold what that process does for us there. So, but we have been sharing all the public comment we've received to the consulting foresters, so they're tracking the thing that we've done so far, and we'll continue to do so till midnight tonight when the public comment period is. So, and then there's just there's a lot of confusion out there, like Matt said at the beginning, about us being a permitting agency and this being permit, and that's not at all what this is. This is just a notification to notify us that there's activity occurring that's tied to a forest operation. And then really what that does is it's our trigger to make sure that if there's any resource protection measures that need to be administered, that we make sure that.
So the public, I just want to make sure this is the public comment is received. You are passing it on to the landowner and the person doing this for the application and make sure they have this and checking to see if there's any additional resources identified in public comment that maybe you didn't know about or didn't have already in that map overlay you talked about kind of on step one. So after that public comment period closes, it's really up to that. I guess we're not calling them applicant, the landowner to move forward or not. There's no decision-making authority by ODF in that. And that the public comment period really is just a box checking exercise in terms of allowing that window open, but it does not give ODF any type of leverage or handle in making a decision. That just basically is passed on to that landowner for them to hopefully consider thoughtfully, but don't have to. I mean, right, like they just have that and they can do what they would like with that. Is that kind of accurate? Okay, all right.
Another question, if I could, that occurs to me. So the internal agency review of the notice, you'll do the review process you described a moment ago, and then that goes back to the landowner. I mean, is there any kind of, I don't know, deficiencies or unaddressed points that you could say that the agency would say that this cannot go forward until, you know, A, B, and Z are addressed?
On this particular notification, we have not found any, not that, no deficiencies as far as our rules. Okay, so.
Yep, and everything we've seen to date, the landowner is fully within the FPA so far. He's following the law, how it's currently laid out. So there's nothing that we found to date that would cause us to have them rethink things.
Yeah, I have a couple of.
Yes, no, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say thanks.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, you had said kind of the second part of receiving public comment, you know, first part passing on. Second part was reviewing it to see if there's any resources identified in public comment that you didn't know about previously. So what would that be? And I'm asking because I think sometimes when the public understands the process, like I didn't know until we had this discussion that that was something that you were looking for. And if people know that that's an important part, that might be what public comments can be focused. So what type of resources, you know, you had mentioned earlier, like streams and birds, but what other types of resources are you trying to identify or do you have in that map overlay that might be missing?
So, well, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong. But so I think we are receiving comments to the second part that I mentioned already. So I think the public is aware of that from what we're seeing from some of the comments we've received. But everything we have received so far, it's resources that we already know that need protected.
Okay.
There's nothing new that's been provided to us yet.
So this would be watersheds, this would be wildlife habitat,
Yes.
would this be cultural resources?
There's cultural resources in there, correct, is one of the resources that we look for. That's, you know, our agency's not directly involved with the protection of the cultural resources. You know, that's a different agency as well. But streams, you know, obviously we've got bald eagle nesting sites, other bird nesting sites, water intakes. So, you know, we pull our information from Oregon Water Resources Department for registered domestic intakes. So we, you know, if there's other ones out there that are not registered, those are things that we'd like to know about as well. Just so we know.
Mr. Lip, could you actually pull up the applications on the second page? Which lists site conditions?
Which
I'll just see.
I've got the
Yep.
full notice.
Yes.
This one?
And
There's
just,
like-
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep.
So,
just for, because like, terminology is important with this. It's not an application, it's not a permit, it's a notification.
That includes us for another person. Oh,
That's it, really?
yeah.
Scroll up, I wanna see that. Well,
Yes.
that's.
What's it say very top?
Just
Very
scroll
top.
Yep, so that's separate.
Permit to
Um,
operate power driven machinery.
So that has to do with our fire rules and telling us when there's machinery involved during fire season, so that tells us if we need to have fire restrictions in place.
Yeah.
That's what that piece is. So, but for the aerial spray, it's the notification of operations.
This is a really bad process.
Yeah.
This is a really convoluted process. Okay. Other question I had is what ability does the agency have to extend public comment?
Talking with our Salem office, we don't have any authority to extend that public comment.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Commissioner Hall, do you have any more questions?
I don't,
If you read though, the site conditions, so that's what currently at least was reported. It exists on the site.
Correct. Yes, these are the site conditions, the protected resources, if you will, that are, whenever that polygon is created for the operation area, things that fall within those are within that area.
I appreciate you both coming today to answer our questions. Yeah.
And we've been in communication with Casey as well as our Representative Dahlberg's office and Sewer Rock Water. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you for being here. I don't know if it was Commissioner Miller that invited you or you just showed up here, but I appreciate you coming. So, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, anything else we want to, given the discussion we just had, anything else you want to add that are kind of bullet points for PIO 10 to add to our list?
Well, just want to make sure we call out the potential impact on water supply and because that's one of several significant things here. I think the things we've talked about, bird nesting sites, the bald eagle, and others. I think we know, at least we have the elements, I think, of what we need to register our opinion, which I think also will reflect the grassroots opinion. I was quite impressed to hear that there have already been 1,500 signatures gathered on a petition to the governor.
More.
More,
There's more
okay,
because
past that
we have
now.
paper. We
Oh,
have
okay,
paper
okay.
signatures.
Well, it's an impressive number.
Okay,
Commissioner, if you could wait until you hear public comment, you might have more things to say in your letter.
Okay, well, we're not gonna be working on it now, so we'll certainly consider anything that comes up during public comment.
okay, anything else from you, Commissioner Hall, on this issue? No, okay. Then moving on to reports, I have Commissioner Hall report on homeless services.
I'm wondering if we should forego this till our next meeting.
Okay.
You and Commissioner Miller were prime audience as well as the public, and since he's not able to be here, I think it might just be
Move it
a
to the next
prudent
one.
thing to take it to our next meeting unless it's overly crowded with items.
Okay, so Miss Kelly, can we just move it to the next agenda? Great, thank you. The only, I have just two real quick things to say. One is, we kind of mentioned during the budget adjustments, we are close to having our winter shelter, I think calling him a manager or something like that, on board, so super excited about that. We're still struggling on a location in the north part of the county, and specifically in Lincoln City. So if you're in Lincoln City, people here today can help us with that. We've had many conversations with folks up there, but just not nail down a location. Doesn't necessarily have to be a building. There are options for pallet shelter types of situations, including parking lots and that kind of stuff. So doesn't have to be a building, but we're still really struggling on a location in the north part of the county. If you have a location for Newport, can't say where that is yet. I think the deal is still pending. And then we're working on a temporary location in Newport, because that site may not be ready by October once. We kind of have a temporary solution and a more permanent one. So things are certainly moving along with the October 1 proposed opening date of those facilities. The other thing I just wanted to say is a big happy birthday to Tim's mom, Dottie Johnson, who I think her birthday is the 21st, right?
29.
29,
29.
turning 101. 100, turning
Okay.
100. So just wanted to say a big happy birthday to her. That is amazing. Yeah. All right, with that, going over to public comments. First, we're going to look at any written public comment we may have received through the Smart Sheets form.
So these two came in from the Smart Sheets form. All three of the public comments that we received concern the Beaver Creeks, right?
Okay, so this is written public comment, which people can fill out at any time. I think the cutoff is Tuesday at noon, am I correct? Yeah, for public comment to go on the next meeting, otherwise it will be kicked over to the following meeting. Now we'll do online public comment. I think we have maybe a couple of people there. So if you are online and would like to give public comment, raise your virtual hand. And while Ken is working on that, I will just remind everybody that public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Commissioner Hall is our timer. I will try to interrupt you to tell you have 30 seconds, but sometimes I don't if you're kind of on your roll and I don't want to interrupt. So sometimes it's helpful for you to time yourself as well, but we will time it here and I'll let you know when your time is up. And commissioners may or may not respond to public comment, but you are welcome to use your 3 minutes. Okay, and I think our first one up, did I see a hand up?
Jerry Lindstrom.
Oh, it's Jerry Lindstrom. Okay, Mr. Lindstrom, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, the issue I bring in front of the board today, and I need acknowledgement on it, is I'm bringing in front of the board and I've sent information, fax, email on Oregon Revised Statute 308.055, an issue I'm having with the tax assessor's office. And it is special assessor appointed if assessor fails to act. And in this ORS that I just stated, it says I need to bring it in front of the Board of Commissioners to get approval to have a special assessor appointed. So this way I can get not only the information correct on my property, but also the value corrected on my property. I've been dealing with this since 2016 and to the present, still the information showing, which is supported by the Oregon Administrative Rule, Oregon Revised Statutes, Lincoln County Zoning, Septic, Building, Lincoln County Surveyor's Office, showing that what my information is. And also I have some supporting information from a court order that a judge gave on my walkway ramp dock, which was downsized in 2020, and it was given to the tax assessor's office. They sent a gentleman down, a Mr. Yost, down to measure, and he agreed with photos taken of each measurement to validate what I was saying back. I was told it was going to be corrected in 2021, which it hasn't. And as of today, when you go on my property to look at from the tax assessor's office, the readout, it still shows the old walkway ramp dock at 1321 at 26,000 square feet, when actually it's 742, which is a big loss of over 579 square feet. And if you look at the value aspect of it, the county has me at $20 for a square foot at 26,420, where in fact, using the 742, it's 14,820. So it's a huge $11,700 difference value on my property. And the other issue is from Judge Mackey in case 5349, he states on my class code that he states that it shouldn't be, or as he says, based on the evidence.
30 seconds.
Okay, well, basically what it is the court order, or excuse me, the class code and my property sizes also with supporting documentation showing that it's not correct, which gives the information or gives support to the ORS 308.055 to have the board to select assistant or appoint an assessor to take over and correct this stuff on the information. I've sent you guys information. You guys have it.
Mr. Lindstrom, it's been
Okay.
a few minutes. Thank you. All right, anyone else? Oh, I do see another hand online. There, Laura Treadway, I think that's that name. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, yes. I wanted to speak to the issue with the Beaver Creek watershed spraying. Can I speak on that, please?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, so this is about county interest because it's about the issue of our citizens and our ecosystems' health and well-being. There was a moratorium passed on aerial spraying in 2017. It was the voters that passed that moratorium, and it was state power that nullified it. We do not have to convince our residents that poisons entering our ecosystems are dangerous. They know that they're dangerous. We need our commissioners to stand up to the state. Ultimately, we need to change the Forest Practices Act that protects these kinds of landowners. This landowner lives in a castle on a 1,000-acre estate in Denmark. Are we living in a kingdom or are we living in a democracy? We need to prevent our communities and our ecosystems to be poisoned. I mean, we don't want aerial spraying in this county anymore. We voted to have it stopped. That was rescinded at the state level. That is not democracy. We need home rule in this county. Western Oregon is being sprayed all over. Every clear cut you see, on average 4 times a year for 4 years. There is also a larger conversation needed here. It is not acceptable or necessary to pollute the environment with these chemicals. Bayer is only pulling glyphosate off the market to protect themselves from all the lawsuits, showing that it causes cancer and other illnesses, not because they care about people's health. Glyphosate products will still be in wide use in agriculture and professional applications. The other herbicides scheduled to be used in this scheduled aerial spray to start on 2nd of September, Rotary SL and Oust, are both toxic chemicals. There is also the issue of the other ingredients term on the various labels. Some of these up to 72% of the ingredients. I spoke to the Center of Biological Diversity last week, and he confirmed that no one actually knows what these other ingredients are, except the EPA. It's an industry secret. I asked him if these were potentially as toxic or more toxic than the so-called active ingredients. And thanks to trade secret laws, they can be. And he says that they are. This is simply a convenient way for companies to dispose of otherwise very hazardous waste, such as banned products like DDT and Agent Orange, thus avoiding Superfund expenses, even swapping such waste among companies. So even the makers of particular products don't know what's in the other components of these products. Backpack spray has been spoken about. This may not travel as far as aerial because of the drift, up to 6 miles of aerial spraying, but it's still likely to get into the drinking water once the rain begins. It is not any less dangerous. Ground spraying is often more concentrated. They use more concentrated chemicals. They still have these other chemicals in these products. The deeper truth here is that spraying doesn't even make any sense from a forestry perspective. In 1933, after the Tillamook burns, the whole of the Coast Range was replanted. They replanted over 353,000 acres were burned down. They replanted them. They didn't use any herbicides, and the forest came back. We need the Oregon, God, there's so much to say about this. Immediate safety concerns with this spray. We need an agreement with DOF to coordinate with the county emergency management to notify the entire community through the Lincoln Alert system and email to everyone at least 7 days prior to the spray. There's also Oregon legislature just passed a new law as part of the drought package that creates a new grant funding program at the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board to support drinking water supplies, such as the Sealwater District, in acquiring land to protect drinking water sources. We need to buy this land. The Sealwater District needs to be supported to buy this property and protect our watershed and our people from being poisoned. Thank you very much for listening.
And I would encourage you to submit your comments to the public comment period.
I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else online that wants to give public comment? Give you a minute to get your virtual hand up. Don't see anybody. Okay. Now we will go to in-person public comment.
First on the list, I've got Jeremy Robinson.
Okay. Welcome, Jeremy. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Oh, and microphone.
There we go. And you kind of have to speak into it. Yeah.
Okay, hi. Hi, my name is Jeremy Robinson. I have written a comment for submission to ODF, and if I can get through it in 3 minutes, I'd like to read it into the record here.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, my name is Jeremy Robinson. I'm a landowner and resident in Beaver Creek watershed. I have grave concerns about the planned aerial spray of herbicides, operation named ANE South Beaver Creek Aerial Spray, and the effects it will have on the local community. My property lies 2.7 miles, 2.75 miles from the target area. My water source is a spring, which is susceptible to surface and/or airborne contamination. Aerial drift from similar spray operations have been known to travel up to 6 miles from the target site, making my land, my home, and my water supply potentially at risk from this operation. Many of my friends, neighbors, and local community members live in close proximity to the target area, some within only a couple hundred yards. Beaver Creek residents without access to a municipal water supply rely on private water systems, many of which draw water from surface sources like mine. Thus, any amount of sprayed chemicals that spread outside of the target areas, whether by drift or subsequent runoff, is likely to contaminate the household water sources of nearby residents, exposing them to the harmful and carcinogenic chemicals in the spray. I'm also a frequent visitor to the Trails and Wetland Nature Preserve in Brian Booth State Park. This popular park attracts recreational visitors year-round to enjoy the natural beauty and the abundance of intact ecological diversity. Bald eagle, osprey, cougar, black bear, deer, elk, bobcats, raccoons, and beaver are among the wildlife species that commonly frequent this nature preserve. It's also a critical salmon stream for several species, including the Central Oregon Coast coho salmon, which is a strain of coho that's listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. The planned spray operation comes within a half mile of this park. It's less than 3/4 of a mile from protected wetlands within the nature preserve. The nearest point to South Beaver Creek is a mere 200 yards. Runoff from the 473-acre spray operation will undoubtedly make its way into the creek, the park, and the wetland estuary, causing ecological harm and putting hundreds, possibly thousands of recreational visitors at risk of personal exposure. There's more to my letter. I don't think I'm going to have enough time for all of it, but I would like to say, when the hazards listed above are considered together in sum, the allowing of this aerial spray operation is in such close proximity to numerous residences and important natural resources is blatantly irresponsible. While private property rights are important, they must be balanced against the rights of those who would be affected by the landowner's activities. Property rights aren't private if it's causing harm to the neighbors and surrounding areas. I'm requesting the landowner abort the aerial spray operation and find another way to manage this timber cultivation practice. There's got to be a better way to cultivate and harvest timber in this region without causing so much widespread contamination and risk and harm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we've got Tyann Sealand. Come back over.
I stayed.
Oh, did you stay?
Hi, I had no idea I was gonna be here today. I came running from the market, so please forgive what I look like. Laura Treadway, who was just on, said she forgot to say, can you add her entire comment to the public record? Can you add my entire comment to the public record as well, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
That's standard procedure. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, my name is Tyann Rios. I live in Seal Rock. Dear County Commissioners, I'm opposed to the aerial spraying anywhere, but especially in my own backyard. I would hope that you too would be concerned about this issue. I live in Seal Rock, and the spraying that looks like it's going to happen is going to be a direct hit in the Seal Rock watershed, where 5,500 Seal Rock residents get their drinking water, and that's from South Beach all the way to the bridge. And that includes my household, my kids. The reality is that these chemicals will stay with us in the ground and the water for years. Sure, for the forest industry, this is an economical way to eradicate plant life on Earth, but the health consequences for humans will result in untold amounts of medical bills, not to mention the wildlife will also be directly affected, causing poison to be placed into our water, into our food chain. For the state government to overrule local entities and allow this to happen is just unforgivable. I am not the most expert person in this subject, but what I understand is that, number one, the landowner gets to spray us. Wow. In return, the taxpayers get to foot the bill for the testing of the water. Should it not be the person spraying the land be the responsible party to ensure our safety? He is not responsible to notify those living in the immediate area. Can you believe that? Conversely, it's the residents has to be responsible to sign in on Fern to be notified. How crazy is that? Like he's spraying us and we're responsible to try to figure out how to be notified. Should it not be his responsibility to notify the residents in enough time for them to escape the direct spray? So residents sign up for notification. They get notified if the spray is within 1 mile. But that spray can float up to 6 miles. That's crazy. We all know that no one controls the wind. Once airborne, it is unstoppable. Shouldn't the landowner who is spraying have to notify the entire county and the surrounding counties that's close to the border? We all know that once the poison, somewhat similar to Roundup, hits the water, there's simply no control where it's going. The government response, well, nothing can be done until there's a measure of damage. Like what? So basically, we all have to be poisoned, and we have to prove that we were poisoned in order for something to be done. That is crazy. The local measure that was passed in 2017 banning the aerial spray, what happened? It got overturned in a higher court. Well, money talks, I guess. Did we as a county do anything to fight that ruling? What can be done to get the state government entities not to interfere with the desires of local citizens? 100% of the people I have talked to. Oh, golly, can I just summarize? Live on the coast and want aerial spraying banned. We need to do what we can to do that. You are very reasonable people. You represent us. We rely on you. We need your leadership. What is it that we can do? Please help us.
And you can submit comments online too, everyone can to us.
Before, but it won't count in the open comment window
Well,
before
with our
midnight tonight.
comments, so our comments, any comments you make here today, well, they go on our website, they go in this meeting, they don't count towards the public comment for ODF. The public comments need to go to ODF. You certainly can make public comment here. But anyone can go online to our public comment form online and make public comment at any time. It will show up for the next meeting. But again, public comments submitted to the county don't go to ODF or don't go to ODF because we're not in decision-making chain.
It's unfortunate because we only have 14 days. I would like to say thank you, Katie, for always being available. I haven't reached out to you, Claire, very often, but Casey has always been available to me as a citizen. I really appreciate your leadership.
Move on to the next thing.
Next is Barbara Davis.
Okay, Barbara.
Let me know if you can hear me, if I'm close enough.
There you go. I can hear you. Yeah.
All right, Barbara. Here we are, deja vu. It began with the word of a helicopter.
I'm gonna get back on this Zoom meeting and I'm gonna text you.
Because we got some feedback. There we go. Continue. Yeah.
It began with the whir of a helicopter and a bad smell. Within 24 hours of the incident, more than one person found themselves curled up in a fetal position on the floor, blood pouring from their mouths. At the same time, as many as 200 others suffered in different ways: burning rashes, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, pain, and asthma. Those 200 included children. Since that fateful day in October of 2013, a dog, a horse, and a man have died. Others are still paying mounting medical bills. The Gold Beach incident that caused this suffering was an illegal aerial pesticide spraying by a helicopter pilot hired by 2 timber companies. Recall Dr. Richard Kaufman of the CDC stating, "People are being exposed against their will and these exposures are routine." But I also see a basic flaw in the pesticide regulations in this country. Our system is at fault here. That was 2013.
Many other herbicide spray poisonings have happened both before and since then. Famously, notably 1978 in Alsea, 2011 in Triangle Lake, and so many more that didn't even make the news. In 2020, we rapidly mobilized all of our resources to fight a lethal virus, COVID, that was threatening public health. And yet for decades, you've stood by and done nothing to protect the public from the plague that is corporate timber. This is a public health emergency. You had the authority in 2020. You have the authority now. So use it. Stop the spray. We don't want to hear that you'll write a letter or talk with county council. This is not a legal issue. This is an ethical issue. An immediate injunction is the minimum. Stop protecting the corporations and protect the people who elected you. The people of Lincoln County voted to ban these poisonings in 2017. But it's 6 years later, and here we are, still fighting for our lives again. Stop the spray. Remember this? Yes. We can do it again. Thank you. You can do it again. Yes.
Next is Deborah Fan.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Fant. I'm a local resident. And I'm a part of Lincoln County Community Rights, the group that passed the ban. A great deal of learning has happened since that time. What I would observe about this time is the amazing response from so many people in this county and in the region about recognizing that the proposed plan to spray Beaver Creek is a really bad idea on many levels. I have had conversations with people who are PhD fish biologists, and they are finding other streams. They're finding spawn grounds that are going to be directly sprayed. I mean, yes, there will be a buffer, but they are in the hot zone. And these are the endangered species. In the system of trying to remediate, carrying out the spray and remediate the harms that happen, it's a great thought, but I really wonder at how effective that is. One of the things that happened from the forester in Washington State is he assumed it's a golden eagle nest that was on this area. Those dates are different for a golden eagle. For a bald eagle in Oregon, the date goes to the end of September for protection of that species. I mean, there are so many ways things can slide through the cracks. And I wish you could hear from the group of people who sat in the room the other day and came face to face with the feeling event of nobody has the right to challenge the timber practice. I mean, where else in our culture is that the case? You can't challenge a practice. I mean, the 1970s were a time when they called it the Green Revolution, which is crazy in retrospect. But it's when chemicals became a much more mainstream kind of activity. We have a plethora of research. Okay, we've got research that shows that the bivalves in streams have these chemicals in their bodies. It is there. It is the will to change that process that has been lacking. And that's where the leadership for you guys to challenge state power needs to come from. And I know that that's asking you to do something that you'll probably get smacked for doing. And it's something that is considered illegal. But how do we make changes in this society unless we go over that edge, make a scene, make a lot of noise, and shake it loose so that it can be changed? There are other ways to grow trees. And I would say, instead of managing nature, who has been doing an effective system for decades, let's cooperate with nature. Let's grow trees. Right?
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah.
Next is Kathy Williams.
My name's Kathy Williams. I'm native, lived here for 54 years on Beaver Creek. I'm here to ask you to direct the Lincoln County Health Department to monitor or observe these spray operations. I feel it's the only agency that can be here at the drop of a hat, as it's a weather dependent operation. And I think it's within the role of the health department to protect human health and property. In 1980, Dr. Wood, who had been my boss when I worked at the health department, felt it was within the role of the health department to monitor aerial spraying. Then there was a ballot measure sponsored by the doctors of Lincoln County to control aerial spraying. I don't remember the exact details. Anyway, the history of spraying in Lincoln County started, as far as I know, in '76 with 13 times the national average of birth defects in the Coast Range. Lincoln County was part of EPA's collection of mother's milk. We never found out who the, I'm sorry, I'm not really good at this. The results were not made public. And we can go on from there. Anyway, long history in Lincoln County. I think since we realized we don't have the power to stop this operation, the health department should protect us. I live on North Beaver Creek, but I met the property owner face to face in '95. He thought our trees were his. And I said, look, here's Beaver Creek. It's got endangered salmon running. And he said in his Danish accent, I'm just taking a few trees from my retirement. That's what he told me. And obviously he lied 1,700 acres later. And now they're going to come back and log those same ridges again with a 25-30 year rotation. So it'll be in my backyard right now. It's what, 3 or 4 miles away. And with the drought, with climate change, they're logging out the ridges. There's less water coming down into the watershed. The effect of the spray is going to be more concentrated. We already know that the amphibians and everything else is dying from what it used to be. So I want you to do what you can. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last on the list is Adam Demminger from SILA.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hall, my name is Adam Demminger, I'm the gentleman of Silver Water District. Yes, the Silver Water District Board of Commissioners in staff does oppose aerial application. In fact, any application of hazardous chemicals, herbicides, pesticides in the watershed where we receive our water from. We are working with state agencies to include ODF and DEQ to ensure that our source of water is free of contaminants before we treat any water that could possibly be contaminated through this process. I do want to highlight that the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners, and most notably Commissioner Miller, has been very involved in this process from the time that we were alerted to it. He's been very instrumental in helping the district along with Representative Gomberg's office in multiple phone calls and meetings and consultation with state agencies to help the district develop protocol for how best to manage this effort. We are learning a lot. Silver Water District serves a population of 5,500 static residents. We probably see about 8,000 folks in our community this time of year, most notably because of the season. So we're concerned about that risk. We're concerned about what the application of herbicides and pesticides will have not only on the environment, but on the community water system as well. So we appreciate your interest in this, your involvement. And we appreciate the fact that you're staying attached to it and working with the community. You get us anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I was trying to scribble a number down and I missed it. You said the number of like year-round water users you have.
We have 2,600 connections to our system. We have a static population of 5,500. In the summer months, we see that population increase as high as 8,000 just due to the demand that we see from our system.
Great. Thank you for saying that again.
That's all the comments.
Okay, is there anyone else that maybe didn't sign up that now wishes to? Nope, I don't see their hands going up. So Commissioner Hall, I think we've had a public comment say maybe we should, after getting all the public comment, maybe we should just talk more about our letter and see if there's anything else. While we did receive one couple comments saying we shouldn't do a letter, I still think we should do a letter because that is the pathway that's presented to us. I don't think we should only do a letter, but I still think we should submit those comments. I think including the numbers that Seal Rock Water District just gave us, the connections and folks, I think that would be relevant. To make a point, anything else from public comment you wanted to kind of incorporate under the letter?
No, I think the broader concerns about, certainly water supply is a very direct, immediate concern, but the larger natural impacts on wildlife and the forest cover. I think we've got the elements. Mr. Lepp, we just directed you to begin drafting a public comment on our behalf. Do you feel like you've got enough information and guidance from us on? Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay.
I have a question regarding that letter, just quickly, if I may. Do you have the email address that you need to send it to?
Yes.
And do you know the subject line that's key to this particular issue? There's a number.
No app number.
Yes, okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for checking. I do appreciate that though. Okay, anything else from commissioners or staff for the agenda? All right, well, then I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. We will meet 2 weeks from now, both in this room and online for our next meeting.